Okay, I think everything is set up. Okay. Okay, so did somebody say something?
Just congratulating you, saying hooray.
Congratulating me. Okay. Okay, so we'll begin with the salutation to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so welcome everybody. We are beginning. This is the first class in the spring session of 2024. And we are continuing. Now we've been studying together the Anguttara Nikaya. This is the Numerical Discourses of the Buddha, which, as we know, is arranged. The different chapters are arranged on the basis of different numerical groups of factors. And so we are in the Book of the Sixes. And I'm not going through every sutta, but I'm jumping around because we went in detail through the earlier books, and so now I'm just sort of selecting the more interesting and important suttas, and particularly those that are of general application, not those that are sort of specifically intended for monastics. And so this is, now we come to sutta number 30, and this is a sutta which is very popular in traditional Buddha circles. Is called the 6 Unsurpassed Things. And the Pali word is the Anuttariya. And so we have the unsurpassed sight, the unsurpassed hearing. First, the Buddha just goes through the list of things, then he'll explain them in greater detail. So the unsurpassed sight, the unsurpassed hearing, the unsurpassed gain, the unsurpassed training, unsurpassed service, and the unsurpassed recollection. Okay, now he's going to explain and elaborate upon them. So he starts off with the unsurpassed sight. And here he's referring to things which were probably common sights back in ancient India. So someone goes to see a very impressive elephant, a very impressive horse, a very impressive jewel, or other various sights. Or they go to see an ascetic or Brahmin of wrong views, of wrong practice. And now this word sight and also seeing, the Pali word is dasana, which is the Pali version of the Sanskrit word darshana, which becomes shortened in modern Indian languages to darshan. And so this is a concept that becomes very important in Indian spirituality. Usually we don't, at least consciously, place much importance on the idea of seeing an impressive person. But in Indian spirituality, even right up to the present day, it's considered important to go to see an accomplished spiritual master. You're not even concerned with listening to the teachings, let alone practicing their teaching. But one of the primary points of emphasis is gaining the darshan of that person. Maybe you've come across that word, darshan, getting darshan of the person. So the word darshan is Sanskrit darshana, which means sight, which is the Sanskrit counterpart to Pali, dasana. So the Buddha is probably speaking here with reference to this idea of gaining the darshan of an ascetic or Brahmin, a prominent spiritual teacher. And nowadays, maybe here in the West, we don't think of going to see an ascetic or a Brahmin, but there's a new development which has taken place. It just sort of was impressed on me just this past week. Though probably you maybe know about it over some time. It's the rise of the internet guru, spiritual teachers, so-called spiritual teachers who become very prominent through the use of the internet to boost their self-image and are very skillful in using social media in order to establish a large following. And somehow they managed to master some of this very impressive spiritual terminology, which they mix together in a kind of word salad and then use to rein in and attract to themselves large numbers of people. Yeah, so there's somehow, you know, the way YouTube works, sometimes it throws up videos which seem to be random, but are probably determined by some deep underlying algorithm function. So there came up this past week a video about a teacher, one of these self-styled gurus, pretty much in the pre-internet stage, named Frederick Lentz, who went by the name Zen Master Rama. And this rang a bell with me, because when I was living in Sri Lanka, when I was the editor for the Buddhist Publication Society, I received a book in the mail called Snowboarding in the Himalayas, ascribed to Zen Master Rama. And even the name of the author, and then it put in parentheses under Zen Master Rama, Dr. Frederick Lentz, PhD, something like that. And it struck me, the name itself struck me as an incongruity, because Rama is the name first of a Hindu god. He was actually probably an Indian king in ancient times, who then became deified and turned into one of the prominent Hindu gods, worshipped as a avatar or incarnation of Vishnu. And then coupling, if you have Swami Rama, it would make sense. In fact, there was a Swami Rama back in the 1970s, 1980s, came from India to the United States and set up a number of yoga centers. But to couple Rama with Zen Master struck me as something incongruous. And the book was a novel, a kind of fictional account of a young American who goes to India to do snowboarding in order to snowboard along some of the Himalayan slopes. And there, sort of out of nowhere, a master called Master Fwap, FWAP, appears and sort of tells him that he's doing everything wrong, and he's going to teach him how he can use snowboarding as a path to enlightenment. And then Master Fwap starts giving him teachings which are intended to show him the Tao of snowboarding, how he could use snowboarding as a means to enlightenment. And the word Fwap was another thing which was incomprehensible to me, since it isn't, to my knowledge, doesn't make sense as a Chinese name, though he was depicted somewhat as a Chinese sage living in the in the lower Himalayan, the foothills of the Himalayas. And yet Phwap doesn't sound like an Indian name at all, not like a Tibetan name. So I couldn't figure out what kind of name it was intended to be. And Master Phwap is again throwing out this kind of spiritualized word salad to his American student to teach him how to use snowboarding as a means to transcend the ego and realize the universal consciousness, which is one with everything. And they had sent me this as a review copy, and if I remember, I don't have a copy of the letter, but I wrote a rather angry letter to the publisher telling them that this is a complete phony work by somebody who is just, pretending to be a Zen master and to be setting out Eastern spirituality in a modernist guise. I never got a reply either from the publisher or from the author. Anyway, this video about Frederick Lentz popped up on my YouTube channel just this past week, so I watched it, and it turned out that he might have started out somewhat well-intentioned, sort of combining. Actually, in his early days, he had become like a student of an Indian meditation master who was based in the United States called Sri Chinmoy. But then he broke away from his original teacher and he set himself up as a meditation master and spiritual master, and then started combining that with the method of using these seminars and then having these, as his popularity grew, having increasingly these large gatherings in very expensive hotels, luxurious hotels. But then over time, his reputation started to deteriorate, I think, as more and more people started to sort of see through him, until I don't remember what year it was. I think it was probably in the early 2000s. He committed suicide. He had a luxurious home out in the Hamptons of Long Island. And after a party, like an all-night party, he went out on the pier, and then he jumped off the pier and committed suicide. Okay, so that was one. And then sort of that, because I watched that, the algorithm system sort of detects what is he watching, sort of without any conscious awareness. And so it throws up some other videos along the same line. And then one was about the new wave of internet savvy gurus. And so one sort of struck me as, just out of curiosity to click it. It's somebody named Bentinho. Has anybody come across his name? Okay, he is originally from Holland, and he's young. In the video, he was quite young, I think in his middle 60s, with a very beautiful, very handsome, with a very beautiful smile. And somehow he was successful in initially started out on the internet, using these Facebook programs and maybe Instagram and other programs to start to attract people to become his followers, then started conducting these in-person events. He came to the United States for a period. He was based in Boulder, Colorado, which is a kind of mecca for spiritual seekers. And then he went to Sedona, California, another so-called spiritual place. And they showed the person who was making the documentary. It came over, the internet service is called Vice. And so she went to attend some of his events, and he comes out on stage, he's adulated and worshipped by this hall full of people. And he sits on this sort of throne on the stage silently for a few minutes, just looking out and smiling at everybody. And seemingly whispering the words, I love you, I love you. And again, he flashes these bright, beautiful smiles. And then he conducts various activities over the retreat. And he's skillful and sort of probably having read numbers of spiritual books from authentic spiritual teachers, and then fitting them together, combining them together into a kind of mosaic. But he has to come up with his own original idea, and his own original idea is that he is the one who is going to instigate, to inspire, and lead the enlightenment of human civilization in the year 2035. And so he's preparing through his followers, laying the groundwork for the planetary enlightenment, which is to take place in 2035. And for him, it's not a prediction, but it's a certainty. This is what he has seen in his innermost, most enlightened vision, that humanity is going to pass through a kind of dark night where it's going to be radically transformed and emerge, just as the butterfly comes out from was it chrysalis? When the worm weaves this kind of net, a chrysalis, then it comes out as a butterfly. So humanity is going through this dark period, and then is going to come out through his teaching by 2035 as an enlightened humanity. My prediction, not through any inner vision, is that by 2030, all of his followers will have dropped him for some other upcoming spiritual teacher. And he might be, at that point, maybe be turned into an alcoholic who will be down in the dumps and completely sort of abandoned by his following. And these people are very, very skillful in finding people's psychological vulnerabilities and then taking advantage of it in order to exploit them and find out, what are their weaknesses and what kind of message to give to play upon their weaknesses in order to make them feel dependent upon himself. Especially people today have this deep need for love, and people have a sense of loneliness. And so if you bring people together and you convince them that you have this deep, abiding love for them, then they feel valued and wanted. And you bring people together, the way he does it is through having sessions of hugging where everybody hugs everybody else. Then you get to feel this connection with other people, and it helps to heal that sense of loneliness. Okay, so that's a bit of a digression. So we're coming to ascetics and Brahmins. Well, these would be people of wrong views and wrong practices. So the Buddha says that there is that seeing that I don't deny, but this seeing, this is an interesting passage. It's low, common, worldly, ignoble, and unbeneficial, and it does not lead to disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. Okay, then he says, when, however, one of settled faith, of settled devotion, one who is decided or determined or resolved, full of confidence, goes to see the Tathagata. Tathagata is a designation for the Buddha or disciple of the Tathagata, this unsurpassed sight. So this is the first unsurpassed quality, the unsurpassed sight, is for the purification of beings, the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, the passing away or the removal of pain and dejection, for the achievement of the method, for the realization of Nibbana. This is called the unsurpassed sight. So that is the unsurpassed sight. And I say this passage is interesting. Do these phrases here remind you of anything that you've seen before? It should. I have to get my glasses.
Bhante, is it the qualities of the Buddha, praising the qualities of the Buddha? Nusati?
These are the glasses I was looking for. Okay, we have the expression, this seeing is first low, common, worldly, ignoble, and unbeneficial. Does that ring any bells?
The first teaching of the Buddha.
Exactly. Exactly. So we see this. Do you remember exactly where in that first teaching?
There's two ways to be avoided.
Exactly. And it's one of those two ways. What is that?
The Kama Sukhalikanu Yogo.
Right, right. So the Buddha, when he's beginning the first discourse, he says that there are two extremes to be avoided by one who has gone forth from the world. So what are these two? The first is to avoid indulgence in sensual pleasures. And he uses exactly the same expressions. That extreme, that is low, common, worldly, ignoble, and unbeneficial. The other extreme, of course, is the extreme of self-mortification, self-affliction, which he says, he doesn't call it low, common, worldly, but he says that it's painful and unbeneficial. Okay, then we have this unsurpassed sight is for the purification of beings, the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, and so on. Does this ring any bell?
Satipatthana.
Again, speak more loudly.
Satipatthana sutta.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the way the Buddha describes the four satipatthanas at the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutta, or the various versions of the Satipatthana Sutta. He says there is this one-way path, this path going in one direction for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, and so on, for the realization of Nibbana. And then we also have other places. We say that where we have the sequence disenchantment, dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, and enlightenment and Nibbana, that also we find in the first discourse of the Buddha, at least some of these terms, where the Buddha says that there is this noble eightfold path that leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment and Nibbana. So we can see that this passage is constructed from three other formulas that occur in different places and that are brought together here. Okay, so this is how even the seeing of the Buddha, I have to say that literally, taken literally, that just seeing the Buddha by itself is not going to lead on its own to the purification of beings, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. But we could say that the seeing of the Buddha could be the starting point for entering upon the path that will lead to purification. Okay, this is warm water. Okay. Okay, so it's not enough just to see the Buddha, but to see the Buddha can be a starting point for the process that leads to engaging with the practice and then attaining enlightenment and realizing Nibbana. And for many people, I have to say that it is the image of the Buddha that awakens that initial interest in the Dhamma that will motivate people to start investigating the teaching and eventually to take up the practice. Even if I could speak a little biographically about myself, back in my early days, originally, this is when I was a junior in Brooklyn College, towards the end of 1964. Somehow it was curiosity about Buddhism that led me to start reading some books on Buddhism. But about that same time, I was going with some friends. We would go every once in a while down to Chinatown in Lower Manhattan to eat in a Chinese restaurant. And we would pass some of these shops, these gift shops, and there would be images of the Buddha in the gift shops. And my friends would just walk past, maybe just glance at the shop and walk past, but I was sort of riveted by the images of the Buddha. You would have these images, maybe like the one behind me, sitting very peacefully, with very beautiful, calm expression on the face, sort of withdrawn into some kind of deep state of incomprehensible, inconceivable peace and bliss. And that aroused in me, it strengthened my interest and sort of sense of desire to eventually to follow the Buddha's path. I had no idea at that time that it would eventually lead me to adopt the life of a Buddhist monk, but it was that image of the Buddha that made very, very strong impression on me. And I think for many, many other people, just the image of a Buddha can awaken their interest in finding out what lies behind that peace and the tranquility and the compassion that radiates out from the face of the Buddha. And so even though today we maybe can't see the Buddha in person as a living figure, but we can see the Buddha through the many images of the Buddha. And it's very difficult to see even real disciples of the Buddha, but we could at least see the monastics who make some effort to embody and to follow the teaching of the Buddha. And maybe in a qualified sense, we could call this an unsurpassed sight. Okay, but once one gains sight of the Buddha, then one has to go further and listen to the teaching. So in a sense, you could say the sight is the starting point, but it has to be followed by maybe the awakening of curiosity, of interest, of a desire to learn. And so in order to learn, then one has to listen. And so the Buddha, he begins by showing the kinds of non-noble things that people go to hear. Maybe in the Buddha's day, someone goes to hear the sound of drums, the sound of lutes, the sound of singing, or various other sounds. Okay, nowadays, I'm sorry, I know that, I don't know whether in the class here in the library, but I know online we have a few Swifties. And so I have to admire Taylor Swift as a person. She is very, very loving and generous. and very kind and very respectful towards others. And when she gives a concert, I've seen some pictures that people have sent me, like a whole Yankee Stadium full of fans, maybe even the stadium is full, but the people who want to see her concert can't all get tickets. And so they set up outside the concert hall large video screens and set up seats, or maybe people sit in their cars and with loudspeakers so that they can play the concert outside the stadium, so those who can't get seats can see the concert. So those who can't get seats within the stadium or within the concert hall can get seats outside and watch the concert. Okay, so people go to see concerts, whether Taylor Swift or back in my days, it would be the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. Or they go to hear the Dhamma of an ascetic or Brahmin of wrong views, Zen Master Rama, or now Bentinho. Okay, so there is that hearing which is low, common, worldly, ignoble, unbeneficial, does not lead to disenchantment, and so on, to enlightenment and nibbana. Okay, but when one of, and these are the important qualifications, one of settled faith, settled devotion, decided, full of confidence, goes to hear the Tathagata or disciple of the Tathagata, then this becomes the unsurpassed hearing, which is for the purification of beings and so on. Same formula for the realization of Nibbana. So this is how listening to the Buddha or a disciple of the Buddha will lead to enlightenment and to Nibbana. So for that to take place, one has to have this settled faith, settled devotion. But for one without that settled faith, without that settled devotion, but who has the curiosity, the interest, the motivation to learn the Dhamma, that still is beneficial, even though it doesn't lead directly to enlightenment, can't lead directly to enlightenment, but it becomes the way to acquire that knowledge of the Dhamma that one needs in order to move further and to actually embrace the Dhamma, to go for refuge, and then to take up the practice. And so in some places, the Buddha speaks about how the sort of the stages of progress unfold from going, you get the clearest presentation of this in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 95, that one goes to see a spiritual teacher, the Buddha or disciple, then one listens to the teaching, and then based on the listening of the teaching, then one investigates the teaching, and then when one investigates the teaching, then one takes up the practice, and having taken up the practice, then one strives diligently, and then by striving diligently, one attains realization. And so here one has to listen to the teaching, and even if one doesn't have settled faith, one learns the teaching, and then one can even investigate by asking questions, expressing one's doubts, trying to resolve one's uncertainties, until one gains a strong conviction, a strong enough conviction to actually engage with the practice. So this is the unsurpassed hearing that one, and especially during, nowadays, in a sense, we're spoiled. Even, I was just discussing this with some people a few days ago, like 20 years ago, if one wants to learn the Dhamma, pretty much you have to go to a monastery, a Dharma center, or a lecture hall to, in person, listen to the person teach. Of course, 20 years ago also there were cassette tapes, so you could learn the Dhamma through cassette tapes. But now, in a way, it's a benefit, because you go onto YouTube and you might have your favorite teacher, you just put his name in, his or her name in, and bing, you click a button, and then you get a whole selection of discourses, and you just choose the ones you like. And if you choose this teacher, but you don't know of some other teacher, but because of the way this algorithm system works, you're like teacher A, and teacher B has visited teacher A at one time, and maybe their meeting was recorded and placed on YouTube. So somehow that genie within the computer knows that B and A have some connection. And so when you watch a video of teacher A, the next time you open YouTube, YouTube will show you not only more videos of teacher A, but suddenly there pops up a couple of videos of teacher B. And in this way, you could get like a whole range of teachings. And not only teachers, but particular Dhamma topic you're interested in. I want to learn about the foundations of mindfulness. So you could put foundations of mindfulness or satipatthana. Or I want to learn about the Four Noble Truths. Put Four Noble Truths in. Bing. Maybe 50 videos at once on Four Noble Truths. Okay, so nowadays we're somewhat spoiled in that respect. But in ancient times, and even, as I said, up to about 20, 30 years ago, you want to learn the Dhamma, you have to go to the place to listen to the teacher. And you have to be there in person. And it requires some hardship, because you have to travel to get there. But when you go through that hardship, that sort of increases the power of your listening, so that the listening becomes more effective. Okay, so we have the unsurpassed hearing. Okay, then we have the unsurpassed gain. Okay, so if someone gains a son, I'd have to say this really does reflect, in a sense, the biases of ancient India, and maybe probably a lot of other other cultures. They don't say someone gains a son or a daughter, but it says a son, because this would be very important in traditional Indian culture, because, please correct me if I'm wrong, that it is the son who performs the shraddha rite when the parent passes away, that it's not the prerogative of the daughter to perform the shraddha rite. The shraddha rite is sort of the rite, the ritual that one performs after the death of a parent, by which one acquires the merit that one then shares with one's departed parent. So in ancient Indian or Vedic culture, it is the son who has the privilege of performing the shraddha rite. I don't think that there is any provision for a daughter to perform that rite. And so Indian families want to have the son, so they consider that to be a great gain. Okay, and then again, this is related from the perspective of the man, that he gains a wife, or a woman maybe gains a husband, or one gains wealth, and today various other goods. People today want not only wealth, but I think power has also become as maybe an even more dangerous obsession than wealth. Power, status, and position. And now with some of these internet programs. People want to have a lot of followers, friends and followers. Or they obtain faith in some ascetic or Brahmin of wrong views and wrong practices. So the Buddha says that that's a gain, but that gain is low, worldly, unbeneficial, and so on. And the true gain, the unsurpassed gain, is when one of settled faith, of settled devotion, obtains faith in the Tathagata, in the Buddha, or in a disciple of the Tathagata. So that is the unsurpassed gain. And so again, this faith, generally on its own, is not sufficient to result in enlightenment, in the achievement of the method, the right way, and the realization of Nibbana. But obtaining that faith is based on, you start off with seeing, listening to the teaching. When you listen to the teaching, then if you have the inquiring type of mind, you investigate it, question it, examine it, and based on that examination, then you gain faith. And so then that faith then will become the basis for entering upon the path. And so that becomes a contributing factor for the achievement of the method. The method here is the Noble Eightfold Path and the realization of Nibbana. So that is the unsurpassed gain. And so don't think of gaining wealth, power, fame, position, but the important thing is to gain faith. And when one gains faith, then the usual consequence of that gain of faith is by doing the saranagamana, going for refuge to the three jewels, to the triple gem. Okay, then comes the next unsurpassable thing, which is the unsurpassed training. And then the Buddha begins by mentioning various types of worldly training. Again, these were the common types of methods of training in his, or fields of training in his time. Skill in training elephants, training horses, in operating a chariot, archery, swordsmanship, various other fields. So now people train in, it's good to get a secular education, whether it's in business management, law, finance, what are some other, engineering, the sciences, computer technology. So those are necessary for earning a living. So those are valid fields of training. And then as hobbies, you could train in the physical yoga, train in judo, karate, tai chi, qigong. What are some other things? Or training in, various other types of training. And those trainings can be beneficial. I can't say that they're unbeneficial, beneficial in their own way. But from the higher perspective, they don't lead to disenchantment, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and Nibbana. But it's when one of settled faith now, who has gained faith, trains, and now we have the triple training in the virtuous behavior, that is the adhisila, the higher training in good behavior, the training in the higher mind, that's the training of the mind in meditation, in the tranquility or samadhi meditation, and the higher wisdom, the training in the insight meditation, in the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata. That is the unsurpassed training for the purification of beings, for the achievement of the method, for the realization of Nibbana. And so we have the unsurpassed training. Okay, so this is the training. So it's really, in a sense, you could almost end the sutta here with these 4 unsurpassables. So you start from seeing. Seeing leads to the interest in learning. So you go to listen. When you listen, at some point you gain faith. Based on that faith, you take up the training. And the training itself is what brings the attainment of enlightenment, the realization of Nibbana. But here we have some extension of the first 4 unsurpassables. This is the unsurpassed service. And so we don't want to just benefit ourselves, but we also want to benefit others. And so here's the Buddha mentions what goes to serve a kshatriya, a brahmana householder, one serves various others, or they serve an ascetic or brahmin of wrong views, of wrong practice. So that's the kind of service, but it's not the noble kind. And so what is the noble service, the unsurpassed service? One of settled faith, of settled devotion, serves the Tathagata or disciple of the Tathagata. And so while the Buddha is alive, one could sort of directly go to serve the Buddha or to serve the Buddha's teaching. And now the Buddha has passed away, but we still have a way to serve the Buddha. And that, I would say, is by serving sentient beings through the Buddha's teaching. That is, we could serve the Buddha by engaging in activities that help to share the Dhamma with others and to spread the Dhamma to others, to introduce the Dhamma to others, or to make conditions suitable for others to practice the Dhamma. Especially when there are monasteries, Dharma centers, meditation centers, devoting your service, going to help out at the monastery, the Dharma center, the meditation center, finding some opportunity to serve, even laying out mats and meditation cushions, cleaning up, vacuuming the rug after the session is finished, dusting when dust is accumulated. So there are various ways to serve the Dhamma, that is for the purification of beings and for the realization of Nibbana. Okay, then we come to the 6th unsurpassable thing, and this is the unsurpassed recollection. And the word here is anusati, which is based on the word sati, which means mindfulness, plus the prefix anu, which suggests the idea of coming close to or repetition. So applying close mindfulness or repeatedly bringing to mind, that is recollection. So somebody recollects the gain of a son, a wife, or wealth, or various other kinds of gain, or they recollect bringing to mind again and again an ascetic or Brahmin of wrong views, of wrong practice. So that is a kind of recollection, but it doesn't lead to disenchantment, dispassion, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and Nibbana. Okay, but now the recollection that is beneficial. And this is recollecting the Tathagata or the disciple of the Tathagata. So that is the unsurpassed recollection. And for the way to practice the recollection of the Tathagata, this becomes within the Buddhist tradition a particular type of meditation practice that we call Buddhanusati, the recollection of the Buddha. And so I dealt with this in an earlier class in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Sixes, and I taught it over the retreat that we had at the Labor Day weekend. And so we have, let's see, yeah, and in the Book of Sixes, Sutta number 25, I taught it based on Sutta number 10, which also has the six recollections. So the noble disciple recollects the Tathagata or the Buddha thus, that the Buddha is an arahat, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, the Sugata, the well-gone one or fortunate one, knower of the world, the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and human beings, the enlightened one, the blessed one. So those are the 9 designations of the Buddha. And so the way I like to teach it is the meditation. We begin with the 9 designations. You become familiar with them, bring them to mind over and over until you can actually sort of experience the taste of the 9 qualities. And out of these 9, usually a few stand out, whereas others are not so, don't make such a strong impression on your mind. So out of these 9, you select 3 and just focus on the 3, turning the 3 over and over until at a certain point when you get familiar with the 3, then you just choose the 1 that has the strongest impression. And you just turn that 1 quality over and over, and then that becomes a means to a samadhi based on the recollection of the Buddha. Or you can sometimes move back and forth between 1 quality and 3 qualities, 1 quality and 3 qualities. And here the Buddha actually explains the benefit of this recollection of the Buddha. So when you recollect the Tathagata on that occasion, the mind is not overrun by lust, hatred, or delusion. And the mind departs from greed. But this doesn't deal with it as fully as the other one. That's, I think, why I prefer the other one. So then when the mind sort of withdraws from lust, hatred, and delusion, then joy arises. Then when joy arises, that becomes strengthened and it turns into delight or rapture. And then that gives way to tranquility, then to bliss, and then to samadhi. And so you could use recollection of the Buddha as a means to samadhi. And then based on that samadhi, through recollection of the Buddha, then you can develop insight or vipassana. And so in this way, recollection of the Buddha becomes directly a means, a vehicle for developing insight. And through developing insight, you can attain enlightenment and nibbana. Okay, so that will do for an overview of these 6 recollections. And so maybe we have some time for questions. And at first I give priority to people who take the trouble to come in person. So if anybody here has any questions, you just raise your hand. Okay, I see Yenny.
Okay, in relation with the Brahmin with the wrong views, have Bhante ever heard Abraham's teaching of Abraham? Teaching of Abraham?
Abraham.
Yeah, Abraham. Have you ever heard that? Is that the wrong view, Brahmin Bhante? Because sometimes I listen to him.
Yeah. I don't know whether Abraham gave formal teachings as such.
I feel like it kind of like
Abraham from the Bible or someone particular now?
someone particular now. It's not like the person, it's kind of like someone's get possessed by Abraham. And then, but the teaching, in my opinion, it seems like in line with the Buddhism, but it's not that deep, of course. I mean, like it's just like on the worldly level. So
Oh, this is like some disembodied spirit who speaks through a person?
yeah, have you?
Yeah.
It came to my feet. So sometimes it's just like wondering.
Yeah, I'm looking around. Is Jason here? There was a microphone.
I think the microphone is here.
Okay, yeah, you can use that. So then I could hear, but people online probably can't hear. You use that microphone.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, the question is whether Bhante ever heard about the teaching of Abraham. Yes, because it came to my feed, and sometimes I listen to it because, in my opinion, it seems like it's aligned with the teaching of Dhamma, but it's kind of like on the worldly level, not like so deep into like in my opinion, Buddhism is very deep,
Yeah.
go to the enlightenment and everything. They not. So sometimes it's just like when I'm down, I'm listening to their teaching. When just like wanna get something, just get through the day.
I see. So this is like some spirit.
Yes, the way that he teach is like maybe Bhante ever heard about the secret, the book of secrets.
I've heard about it. I don't.
Yeah, so
These are sort of what they call maybe like New Age spirituality.
in my opinion, yes.
Yeah, sort of picks up a little bit from here and there from Eastern religions, then mixes it with a kind of, I call a pseudoscientific terminology.
Would that be, I mean, I know that listening to the Dhamma talk
Yeah.
is better, but sometimes once in a while,
You kind of like, okay, this is that.
Yeah, probably. Let's try it again.
Yeah,
Maybe the battery ran out.
I think that I'm sorry. Because we haven't used it for so long.
Oh, probably it's been here all winter, not used. Yeah. Okay.
Just asking for some guidance, that's all.
Yeah, I would be a little careful. I mean, you could listen since if you have a good knowledge of Dhamma, then you can be able to distinguish in those what they say that is valid and what things seem questionable. Yeah, I'm not familiar with these teachings. I just have heard a little bit about.
Because that is very popular in
Maybe about 20 years ago.
the secrets. Probably, yeah. About
The secret that you send out positive thoughts and it's supposed to attract positive things to you.
yes, something like that.
I mean, there's
Law
maybe
of attraction.
the law of attraction. Maybe there is there might be some truth to that, but it wouldn't take it to be invariable truth.
Like I said, it's probably very, very worldly.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's taught as a way to make worldly gains, like you think out thoughts like, I'm going to be a success in my business, and then it will somehow automatically impinge on the forces of the universe so that out of nowhere your business will be successful.
But I also believe, of course, that the karma also part of it. They did not touch the karma in this teaching.
Yeah, there are karmic conditions which can go against your intentions. Okay, any other questions? And let me see, how do I get questions? I go to the
Yes, I want.
participant list. Okay, I see. I take them in order. Francine.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I want to. Make it clear that life, without love and something having, even something having, we can't burn again. We can't burn into this world.
just this world. In my life, I experienced that if there is no love and no any, just a little clinging or craving, the life is not existing. Yeah. So I do want to know the noble disciples of the Blessed One, just like the text, yeah. I want to make it clear that if we live as learn from the Buddha and live suitable as Buddha, without any clinging and craving, that is very good. But our families, maybe they feel not happy and they feel difficult to accept that. My sister, my
Yeah, I think
mother.
please try to put your question very simply, clearly, and directly.
If anyone can speak Chinese, can hear, can understand Chinese, I can express myself just very simple. But in English, I can't express myself. Yeah, simple enough. Sorry.
Okay, I think what you're saying is that how can you live in family life if you don't have some clinging and craving? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's natural that when you're living in family life, there has to be some craving and clinging. Otherwise, well, let me put it this way. When you're living in a family life, you have to take the responsibility of looking after the members of your family, whether your parents, if you're a child, or your children, your husband, your wife. So you have to take that responsibility. You don't abandon those responsibilities. What you try to do is to work at transforming the self-centered clinging and craving into a loving concern for the well-being of your family members. And then through that loving concern, you undertake whatever activities are necessary in order to promote the well-being of your family members. Hope that answers the question. Okay, I could really only take maybe 2 questions because I'll have to go up for the meal. So the next one will be Yus.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the teachings. Yes.
Okay.
I got a question about Buddha Nusati and the Asian practice of chanting 108 times Iti Piso. Usually in the Eastern or the Thai tradition, they do that maybe monthly or during the full moon or the lunar day.
Yeah.
Does that count as Buddha Nusati? Because it takes 2 hours and it's very fast and it's very discursive. It doesn't lead to calm, I don't think, in my experience.
Yeah, it seems like that is maybe we call this a ritualized modification of traditional Buddha Nusati. So it becomes a sort of a ritual rather than a contemplative practice. But originally the Buddha didn't teach anything about reciting the formula of Buddha Nusati a certain number of times, but that's maybe based on a popular belief that developed in different streams of Asian Buddhism. Somehow the number 108 has a special significance. Yeah, but it only becomes Buddha Nusati if you're really focusing the mind on the qualities of the Buddha. If you're just doing it like a mechanical recitation, In a sense, you could call it a Buddhanusati, but it's not really the contemplative practice of Buddhanusati. Okay, the
Thank you.
next question will be Amy.
Thank you, Bhante. My question is actually really quick. You have made mention of Majjhima Nikaya on the seeing the teacher. I missed the sutta number.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
It's sutta number 95. It's called the Chunky Sutta.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, since that was very short, so we'll take Deepak.
Namaste, Bhante. So this is my first time here, joining from Toronto, Canada.
Okay, you're welcome.
So thank you. I have a quick question, and this is regarding my meditation practice, something that I've been observing over the last couple of months, maybe like 1 year. So when I get into a sitting session, the first 10, 12 minutes are really good. I'm able to focus, get my body, mind in one place. But then what happens after a certain period? I'm starting to solve problems which are like work related, like most of the times. And this is a pattern I have observed. I'm trying to understand that, is it like my mind getting too attached to work duties, and hence my mind is always pulling me back towards work, and hence I lose that focus and not able to like concentrate in the remaining period of my sitting session.
Yeah, so let me see if I understand the question. That when you're when you're sitting for the meditation at the early part of the session, the mind seems to be getting calm and sort of peaceful and focused, but then different types of, after a certain point, different worldly concerns start coming to the surface. Is that the question?
Yes, and those worldly concerns are work related, my office job.
Work related.
Yeah, so
I think
most of the day.
quite a natural process. That often does happen. Normally, what I find is that when I sit in the initial period, first few minutes or so, all of those thoughts relating to one's recent activities start coming to the surface, and then the mind starts getting focused. But maybe it works in a different way with other people.
Right.
But just persist, and just when you see that the mind is getting distracted by these concerns relating to work, just recognize them and then let them go, and then bring the mind back to your meditation subject. It's a matter of training the mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I have been trying. I don't know if I should be trying hard, because like you said, if I try too hard, mind kind of acts against you. So I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to find a strategy.
But don't force the mind to push away those concerns. Excuse me, I'm getting some phlegm. If those thoughts become too persistent, what you can do is let go of the main meditation object. Say you're doing the mindfulness of breathing. Let go of the breath and just focus on the mind, watching the mind. So those thoughts come, you just turn them into objects. So you note thinking about work, let it go, thinking about work, recognize, let it go, and then just let the mind settle down, watching that stream of thoughts arise and pass away. And then you're just seeing the mind as the sequence of thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. I'll give it a try, definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm sorry I see a few other hands, but I have to go up for the meal because they wait for me up there. So we're going to end with the sharing of the merits. So I'm going to dedicate the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyanta manumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyanta manumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata Jabumata Devanaga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mang Parang Dukha Pata Jani Dukha Baya Pata Jani Baya Soka Pata Jani Soka Pantu Sabe Pipani.
Fuck.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Weekend. Bye bye.
Much, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank
Thank you, Bhante.
Good health to you, Bhante. Good health to all. Good night.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante, we lost
Thank you,
sound.
Bhante.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Be well, everyone.
Yeah. We lost sound, Jason. But that's okay, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante, for all the teachings. Be safe,
Thank
stay
you,
well.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Namo
Thank you,
Buddhaya.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Have a good
Thanks,
lunch.
Jason.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, Gita.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Be well, Jason. Take care. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Jason.